cornucopia spilling out with abundance, reminding us of how fortunate we are, how blessed we are, how good God has been to each of us. Thanksgiving, you know, is the ultimate American holiday. Not just because it celebrates those first settlers and natives joining together in a feast of harvest. It's uniquely American because it celebrates abundance. Compared to the rest of the world, Americans have more, we consume more, we waste more, and we want more than any other people on the planet. You'd expect that our hearts would be filled up and overflowing with thanksgiving, right? But all that abundance, it doesn't always point us in the direction of returning thanks to God, now does it? You'd think that it would, but the truth is, abundance tends to push us in the other direction. Abundance, if we're honest, abundance produces more desire, more greed, even a sense of entitlement. Sure, I have a lot, we're tempted to think, but then again, I worked hard for it. I deserve it. You remember a couple of weeks ago, right, when we shared the story that Jesus told about the rich farmer with crops so abundant that he pulls down his barns to build bigger ones so that he could hoard up this abundance for himself, allowing himself to eat and drink and be merry. Where was the sense of that man's gratitude? Where were his prayers of thanksgiving for all of that abundance? And all he could think of was himself, his own desires, his own comfort. If Thanksgiving doesn't come from abundance, having more for which to be thankful, where does it come from? Today I choose a very unlikely text for this Thanksgiving worship. It comes from Lamentations. I'm going to read from the 3rd chapter of Lamentations, beginning at the 19th verse. The thought of my affliction and my homelessness is wormwood and gall. My soul continually thinks of it and is bowed down within me. But this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I will hope in him. The Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the soul that seeks him. It is good that one should wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. This is a lament. A lament is an expression of sadness, an expression of regret. One might say it's a heavy sigh. That's a lament. And we have a book full of these in the Bible, the book of Lamentation, a book filled with heavy sighs and forlorn expressions, even cries for pity. What we know today as the book of Lamentations is a collection of community prayers and liturgies by the Jews who were living in exile in Babylon. And you know that story? Do you remember why they were in Babylon? They had been defeated in battle. Their own land, their homeland, the promised land that God had given them, was now occupied by the enemy. And the best and the brightest and the most significant are removed from that promised land and carried off into exile in Babylonia. Their holy city of Jerusalem and the temple lay in ruins. The people of God are alien refugees in a foreign land, taunted and oppressed by their captors. And whenever the people would gather for worship and raise their voices to God, they're not singing praise songs. They are not in an hallelujah state of mind. No, They are raising their voices in lament, wondering if they're being tested, wondering if they are being punished, perhaps neglected altogether by God. They're wondering if their sins have caught up with them. And is this Babylonian exile their punishment, their discipline? Listen to some of the words from Lamentation, these from the first chapter. Judah has gone into exile with suffering and hard servitude. She lives now among the nations and finds no resting place. Her pursuers have all overtaken her in the midst of her distress. Hear it? That's a lament. Here's another from Lamentations 2. Cry aloud to the Lord, O wall of daughter Zion. Let tears stream down like a torrent day and night. Give yourself no rest, your eyes no respite. You'll find statements like these all the way through Lamentations. The gathered people of God are broken, and they're filled with despair. So you might be wondering, preacher, why on earth are you reading from Lamentations on this of all Sundays, on this Sunday of Thanksgiving? Well, because, you see, Lamentations is more than just these statements of woe and sorrow, and amazingly more. You see, interspersed between these verses of anguish, these verses of suffering, are remarkably statements of hope. Songs of thanksgiving. I want you to listen again to our text that I read earlier this morning. This time I want you to listen and pay attention if you can hear the turn that it makes from despair to thanksgiving. Listen again. The thought of my affliction and my homelessness is wormwood and gall. My soul continually thinks of it and is bowed down within me. But this I call to my mind, and therefore I have hope. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. You know that old hymn, right? Great is thy faithfulness. Do you ever realize that was that wonderful hymn, that wonderful song came out of a lament of anguish? Did you know that? A lament of sorrow and suffering. Oh, it's so beautiful. My soul thinks constantly of my affliction and is beaten down. But then I have hope. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness, God. Isn't that astonishing? You see, the people are gathered before God, and they're filled with despair. They're filled with agony, and yet they're somehow able to acknowledge God's goodness, God's providence, God's steadfast love. Isn't that amazing? Does that surprise you? It did me. It did me that Thanksgiving would come out of these great moments of sorrow and anguish. It surprised me until I thought about it, until I thought about those very moments when I have been witness to genuine Thanksgiving. Not the holiday. No, those times that I have seen and heard people expressing sincere thanks for God's mercy, thanks for God's providence. And I realized that they came at the very times when they were experiencing some of the most difficult hardships, most difficult times of their lives. You see, I've been along bedsides when family members are quietly keeping vigil over the suffering of someone that they love. The families all gathered around and their hearts are broken and their their grief, they're unable to be comforted. But what's the preacher's job? What's the preacher's job in those moments? It's simply to be present. A representative of God's presence even in the midst of the worst of times. And as I have just sat there nearby or stood nearby, I have always been given a gift of listening to what family members have to say in those tender and yet awful moments. They'll say things like, you know, God has been so good to us. You know, we've had 60 years together. Or they'll say things like, I'm so blessed to have had such a good mama. Maybe after the death has finally arrived, following a long and difficult battle, I'll hear them say things like, oh, thank God he's not suffering any longer. He's at peace. See, when I think about that, when I reflect on those moments and those words of thanks that I've witnessed to in those times, it occurs to me, Thanksgiving, real Thanksgiving, so often is born out of suffering, out of pain, out of grief. And could it be that that's why Lamentations, filled with words of anguish, are also dotted with words of praise? Words like, the Lord is good to those who wait. Words like, although God causes grief, he will have compassion according to the abundance of his steadfast love. For he does not willingly afflict or grieve anyone. You, O Lord, reign forever. Your throne endures to every generation. Hear these words of praise that come out of the worst moments of anguish. And if you think about it, even our own story of the American Thanksgiving follows this same pattern. We love to tell our children the story about the first Thanksgiving, pilgrims and native people sitting down together, eating this bountiful meal on that first Thanksgiving. But you know the story, don't you? That meal and that prayer of thankfulness said over it came after a period of severe starvation and death and despair. See, most of us, I think, are familiar with the outline of the story. The pilgrims come to America seeking freedom to worship the way that they want. And they arrive in this new land on the Mayflower, right? And their first winter is beyond difficult. They don't have enough shelters built yet when the snows begin to fall. And so many of the pilgrims return to the Mayflower to live out that winter on the ship that first winter. And they suffer from the bitter cold and lack of food. And in the end, did you know, only half of them survived? Half. Think about that. Think about that the next time you see smiling pilgrims, he in his black buckle hat, she in her white bonnet and her apron, sitting down before this cornucopia just flowing out with the fall harvest. Think that they are doing that after half of their community had perished in the winter storms. Did you know that? In April of that year, the Mayflower sails back to England. But every one of the remaining pilgrims chose to stay. And the Wampanoag people native to this land, they share their knowledge with the pilgrims. Knowledge of hunting and fishing and farming. And they help them put crops into the ground that spring. And so it is the following fall, Plymouth Governor William Bradford declares a feast to give thanks to God for their harvest in this new world and the friends who helped them survive. 90 Wampanoag people joined the remaining 52 pilgrims for a 3-day feast. And they served wild turkeys and geese and ducks, and the Wampanoag, they bring 5 deer along with lobsters and clams and oysters and fish to accompany this this harvest of produce, cucumbers and carrots and cabbages and turnips and radishes and onions and beets and corn and wild fruits that they gather. And the Thanksgiving prayers are offered at that first Thanksgiving. And they are prayers not simply for the abundance that is set on the table in front of them. They lift up their prayers of thanksgiving for their very survival and for the sacrifice of those who were not there then to join them in that feast. Prayers of God's goodness experienced through this terrible time of trial. Now for the deliverance after that time. That's what Thanksgiving is about, you see. Now be careful. Be careful. It's one thing to notice that hardship often produces thanksgiving. It's quite another to suggest that hardship is a prerequisite for it. I'm not suggesting that in order to be more thankful, we should endure more suffering. That's not the message here today. I don't want you to leave here today thinking, I sure hope something bad happens to me so I can really be thankful. But it's good, isn't it? It's good to remember that God is good in all things. And that goodness, while evident in our prosperity, is most evident in moments of struggle and deficiency. The very times that we've had to rely on God. To rely on God to get through. This coming Thursday, most of us are going to sit down with family or friends. We're going to eat too much. I know I will anyway. Some of us are going to watch a little football. Others will start working on Christmas lists and Christmas chores. And we'll be thankful. We'll be thankful for a day to do those things. Suppose, though, this year, we take some time. And I mean some real time to reflect upon just how much God really has given us. Suppose we take some time to remember the times we've had to rely on God. The times were hard. And let that gratefulness really take root in our hearts. No need to wait until difficult days to come to do that. Suppose this year we say our prayers of thanksgiving, even as we have so much to be thankful for. Thanks be to God. Would you stand and join together in our final